يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي.
Doubt, religious doubt, particularly with the rise of science, with Galileo and then Darwin and so on, it's characterized by trauma and epistemological uncertainty and questions about the reliability of the Bible and so on. And these issues don't really, traditionally haven't impacted Muslims at all. I think very recently questions of evolution, the nature of the issues that arise from Darwinian evolution have started to impact the Muslim mind in the West and globally. But this is a very recent thing, I think. And
I think so. Again, well, it's interesting because there's 2 points here. There's one where it's the challenge or the question around whether or not there's a certainty that God exists, and then I think there's the second one which has to do with religious understanding and its and how it synthesizes science. So you can say how religion is now starting to affect Muslim viewpoints.
Yes.
I see that as different. That could be, maybe even in the same view as the unseen or the faith side of things. How does this relate to my individual understanding that I am, a Muslim, or that I believe in God with certainty? But the first point of the certainty, that's the one that I don't have.
I know. I think I experienced it as a gift, actually, because as I grew up, I was an atheist or a completely secular person. It was only in my very early 20s that I became a believer in God, and that was as a response to prayer. It became something that became part of my mind. It completely changed my mind. I've never doubted God ever since, and that's quite a common sort of testimony. I've had problems and doubts about religious doctrines, but not about the existence of a creator. That's the difference. I think in the West we are pretty much brainwashed into atheism, and that's why.
I think they're both interesting points to discuss. I'm happy to discuss both of them, but I see them as different points. I think as well as you do.
I think in the West we are brainwashed or socialized, to use a neutral term, into an unbelieving, almost atheist perspective. And I think that through our education, through our media, through everything, our culture now has become detached from a religious perspective on life, and that has just is a tragedy. It's quite unique in the history of human civilization, I think, where culture just abandons apparently any reference to a transcendent norm or to a creator. So people now happily go about their lives, or unhappily go about their lives, seemingly without any reference to eternal norms of behaviour. So when it comes to things like gay marriage or abortion, very topical, they're no longer discussed in this country in terms of religious, God's own commandments on this subject. There are still Christians and Muslims around, but they're a minority.
And I'm sure those are discussed amongst other Christians or Muslims in that context. But again, it's very hard to discuss a context or within a context of a doctrine that other people, not everyone, ascribes to.
Yeah, there's been a loss of faith, but I think my view is it seems to be the case that it's only really in the Islamic faith that there is a very robust faith system still in place, and that's not been particularly affected by the harsh winds of Western materialism. I think Islam has retained its integrity, whereas Christianity seems to have just capitulated. By Christianity I mean the Church of England or the Methodist Church or the URC. They seem to have capitulated to the prevailing zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, whereas Muslims tend to hold on tenaciously to faith. I get that impression.
Due to maybe the preservation of the Quran has kept
True.
As opposed to the corruption of the Bible and for instance, the corruption of the belief,
How is the Bible corrupted? I don't know. Or is it just the idea of the believing in it? It's not as strongly held.
The whole concept of God has changed from the day the delivered the message.
what we have now.
He wasn't. After that. I know.
I think I do agree with that. I think there are bigger reasons in Europe or in the West why Christianity has been rejected as a religion. I think that the idea of God as a loving, almost parental godfather figure who just loves us. God is love. And yet look at all the suffering in the world. Look at the cancer, look at the earthquakes, look at people dying and so on. This is a challenge for Christianity in a way it's not for Islam. And also that the loss of faith in the afterlife, the life after death, the sense of a day of judgment, the sense of our being here for a very short period of time and then spending eternity after that, the sense of looking to the next life for justice and for heaven as well, aspiring to heaven. All this seems to have disappeared from regular Christian discourse, which often is just about this world. It's about how to be nice to your neighbour, about how to how to care for refugees. All those are good things, but it never seems to rise above that level. And I've been to sermons where I was convinced that surely the preachers can't be talking about mundane neighbourly matters. I thought he was talking maybe he's talking in metaphors. Maybe he really means I couldn't believe he was just talking about secular matters. That's all he was doing.
So do you have the time?
No, about 6, I'd imagine. Anyway, so I think Christianity has kind of become secularized and it becomes unbelievable. People think, well, what relevance is it anymore? Whereas at least Islam has a message.
Thank you.
At 6:30. Yeah. Whereas Islam does have a clear message about our role in this life. It has answers to questions about the meaning of life, about the existence of God and what He wants from us, and about what happens after we die as well. It has very clear answers, which I don't think are being undermined by secularism.
That's what I meant by corruption, Because that concept of even the hell and heaven is not mentioned much in the Bible, right? However, in the Quran, it's repeated.
Well, it's there in the Gospels. Heaven and hell is a lot in the Gospels.
It's not as much as in the Quran. That's my understanding. The Quran maybe a page and some reference to it. It gives you always bring you back to the reality.
Money, no, people, yes, money shit, people, everything.
Speaker's corner for you.
She's not giving us a chance to listen to her.
No, I know. She
just went up to the beggar and said money shit and then she ran off.
So one thing the beggar needs is money.
But it's interesting that you mentioned within Christianity that there's kind of been this pull away from faith, specifically because of the question saying, how could we believe in God if God is all good and all knowing, and yet there's so much suffering. But it seems like that pull away is partly as a result of doctrine then, because it's still not there's the main question is like, does God exist? Yes or no? And then if you say yes, then is God all-knowing? What is God then? Is God all-knowing? Is God all good? Which is different from the question of does God exist or not?
Well, I think Islamically, it's just my understanding of what the Quran says, that yes, God exists, just accepts God. The people who don't believe in God or seem to have some kind of sickness almost. It's almost they can't see properly or they can't understand.
The wind. We'll just switch.
So there's a problem with their faculties and understanding reality. It's seen as a disorder. It's not seen as just a belief. But I think the way that the Quran talks about our existence here and God gives a different perspective on the whole issue of meaning and purpose and suffering and cancer and all these stuff. Because in the Quran's perspective, we're here for a very, very short period of time. Our lifespan, if you live a whole lifespan, is very short compared to the immensity of eternity. If you think of endless duration, even our universe, 13 billion years old, a human lifespan is almost invisible compared to that length of time. But our real life is in the hereafter, after we die. At that point, we will meet with God, and there will be an accountability for our actions. There'll be a day of judgment. There's a heaven, there's a hell, and so on. And those injustices that take place on this earth will be righted. No injustice will be left unrequited.
Okay.
So the temporal brief injustice of this life will have an answer in the next life. So the balance is restored.
What? Forgive my ignorance here. What happens? So that happens. That's what happens afterwards. What happens before life?
That's an interesting question. According to Islam, that all of us as a species were before God at one point, and we were all asked. I don't remember the exact words, but we were asked as a humanity, who is your Lord? And we all said, Allah, you are our Lord. The sense being that although we may think we forget what happened to us before we were born on this planet, there's a sense that we had already given our allegiance to God before, and so we can't say that we've never heard of God, that we were at one point called to our allegiance. I remember that quite good.
The question is rather, in what form were we? Did we exist
I see.
before we were born, right? Well, this concept of being with flesh and spirit or soul, right? So, as we know from observation, we are born, and sometime during the birth process, according to the Quran, the spirit is being injected into the human being in its womb at a certain age during this.
Yes.
And that spirit will be part of the body until the day he dies. When the spirit split apart from the body.
And where's the spirit before that?
This is in the knowledge of Allah. We cannot where in what form and how, because God says that the spirit only Allah knows about its existence.
الروح من أمر ربي. It's a command of God. It's in the chapter Isra. So the guy asked him, يسألونك عن الروح. What is ruh? Means what is soul. So he say, كل الروح من أمر ربي. So it is a command of God. So basically,
من أمر ربي here is not necessarily command. It is
I mean,
it is his affair.
Exactly,
It is in his affair.
And it's funny you brought up Dawkins. I'm actually going to go hear him speak tonight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's he speaking on?
Scientific reasoning. So not one of his talks on atheism. It'll be him and Sam Harris.
Oh, another one. Yes, yeah, another atheist.
I think he's Buddhist, actually.
He's an atheist.
Atheist? Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, he's well-known atheist. Yeah, Buddhists are not necessarily believers in God.
Not as the ultimate way to salvation.
So, oh, right, okay.
So, do they believe in a creator?
One of the guys know. Apparently the other one no either.
But Sam Harris is a well-known atheist. I mean, yeah, I was surprised to think you. Maybe he's had a recent conversion to Buddhism. I don't know.
So no, I know he's big into meditation, and he's studied Buddhism. So actually, I don't know if he's. Haven't asked him.
Yeah, but Buddhists are not normally theists. Then, although some do apparently pray to Buddha like it's a god. But anyway, different kind of Buddhism.
But I find these questions, fascinating. I think it comes down to, at least the way I see it, is how one should live their life. And the sticking point that I get to, which gets around to the second point. So it's not does God exist or does God not exist, but what doctrine would you ascribe to then, if it does? So as you mentioned, you had some issues with some doctrines where you're thinking about it in your younger days. That's something where I find all of the doctrines, you have to believe it this way or else it's this way or the highway kind of deal.
Well, but for us, there's certain doctrines we have to believe because they're based on revelation. So they're not. But interpretations of those doctrines, are they literal? There's the discussion about those.
Yeah.
And other things we don't have answers to, where they can be open-ended discourse. I think how we live our lives is very much premised on our metaphysics, on our cosmology. There is a foundation to that, because if there is no God, and there's if Nietzsche was right and nihilism of a kind is the truth, then if we can get away with a perfect crime, why not? There's no reason not to if you're so inclined. If one can get ahead by cheating and stabbing others in the back and be applauded socially for it, like some rapacious businessman, naming no names, recently, who died 2 days ago. You could be applauded for that. Why not? Because if you can get away with it, that's fine. And so that kind of metaphysics can lead to that kind of life.
But I think that's a social question then as well, as much as it is philosophical. I mean, you could take, so you brought up Nietzsche, right? You could also bring up Camus, who also didn't really believe in much God. He was an existentialist, but said you should enjoy life and you should still have some moral fabric to your being.
But I would question if there is any moral foundation really in an atheist worldview, because ultimately everything is meaningless. And the reason I like Nietzsche, because he follows through with his atheism. With a kind of relentless logic, whereas people like George Eliot, for example, the novelist, who was an atheist herself, he despised her because she still seemed to evince a kind of Christian morality in her novels like Middlemarch. She seemed to be a Christian, a cultural Christian, even though she was privately atheist. Whereas Nietzsche wouldn't have any of that. He said, no, you've got to be consistently atheist through and through, even in your morality and your politics. And I admire that because there's a certain integrity to it, rather than simply covering oneself in a Christian morality, but privately rejecting the metaphysical basis of that.
You can ascribe to an existentialist worldview and still adhere to a social contract and feel that if you kill someone or try to commit a perfect crime, it's still not going to be good because these perfect crimes could be committed on you as well.
But that's a kind of utilitarian argument. It's only not good because it could be committed on me as well. Not because of its intrinsic wrongness, but because I may get it in the neck back. But that's a kind of selfish argument. Still, it's not an argument based on a moral world, is it? It's I better be careful because it might come back and bite me too. Rather than no, human life is precious or sacred, and we must not take it. That's not the argument.
I think in some senses that's true. I think religion has similar pitfalls in that sense, where if you do something wrong, you're still going to get it by God.
What if you turn back and repent?
I'm sorry?
What if you repent?
No, not okay for sure. But the point I'm trying to make is you should have the argument is you should have some moral standing, because if you don't, then you're gonna have, let's say you don't repent, you're gonna have God, even if you get away with the perfect crime, God's gonna say, hey, I knew what you did. So there's still some repercussions to that. Similarly, if you don't believe in God and you commit the perfect crime, the reason still why you wouldn't want to do it is because somebody could commit the perfect crime on you. So
that's not a moral reason. That's a survival reason. There's no morality in that. I'm going to be careful. I may get it back too. Whereas a moral answer would be no. It is wrong to commit that evil act in itself. Whereas that's not the understanding in your scenario. Because you could say,
why is killing wrong?
So, because you could say, by the way, if you could commit that crime and you knew for certain you wouldn't get it back in your own neck, then that would satisfy your concern, and you would go ahead and commit the perfect crime because there's no comeback, is there?
Yeah. So the question I would ask is, I guess, and now we get into morality, which is also a fun one. Why is killing wrong, or why is stealing wrong?
I never said killing is wrong.
It's wrong. Why is?
But it's not. But it's not. No, you see, I don't believe that. It's not a statement I adhere to. I don't believe killing is wrong.
Okay.
I believe that killing, in certain circumstances, is justifiable.
Yeah.
For example, in some forms of self-defense, in some kinds of just war, in some kinds of execution for particularly egregious crimes, injustice, then the death penalty is appropriate. But I believe that outside of those, we must always not kill, and if we do, we're guilty of a crime. So it's not black and white like that. Whereas in atheism or in a godless world where there's no metaphysical basis, ultimately none of that is rooted in anything except personal whim and emotional choice. There's nothing there. It's not given. It's not a structure that we obey. It's something that we invent in our minds. Yes. And therefore we can twist that logic to serve our own purposes with impunity.
You can have subjective morality for sure. I would view my morality as highly subjective.
Your statement in the Quran, whoever kills a single soul as if he kills the whole humanity. Does that answer the question?
Yes. So if that happens, then you're essentially, God will be upset at you.
Unless you repent.
The result is, like as if killing the whole humanity,
I think there's a point here about when you say God gets upset. I think in Islam, God is not like a human being writ large who just gets upset. That's not the. No, but he's also not a human being. He's not. I think one of the things that Richard Dawkins does so appallingly is he caricatures and misrepresents the theistic position by ridiculing it, and he will come up with things like that. Oh well, God gets very upset. That's not how we think. God, according to the Quran, God is nothing like unto us at all. He is not a grandfather in the sky, projection of a Freudian wish fulfillment. He is the uncaused cause of all that is. He's ontology. He's the reason behind why something exists rather than doesn't exist, to use Western language. But also he's merciful, he's compassionate, and many other things as well. So he way transcends our humanoid characteristics, but we can relate to him nonetheless.
So in that sense, then one could say the question around from a logical point of view, the question as to whether or not God exists or not exists, it can't be proven.
Depends what you mean by proof.
It's a personal thing.
Well, it can't be proven or disproven.
Well, he sends us science. He sends us science within our own selves. So you don't have the power to convince anybody else. But God, you don't guide. God guides. So God chooses who's going to guide. But He'll send you science within yourself and give you that knowledge of certainty that He doesn't. And you'll feel the benefit of that. And that will be reaffirmation of your faith.
So taking the assumption that or the position that God exists, I think it would be it's very important as well to talk then on the doctrine side of things. So what does that mean to us as humans?
Islam's not heavy on doctrine, on dogma. Okay. I know Christianity is laden with dogmas. Okay, everything from original sin to the Immaculate Conception, you name it. Islam is not really like that. It's much more focused on our behaviour, on actions, on what we do. It's more Jewish in that sense. Okay. So it's not laden with theology, but with our behaviour towards God and to human beings. There are things we have to believe, certainly, that God exists and so on, but it's not they're not big theology books that we have to believe. That's not quite how it works.
يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي